All right, everybody. I don't do the whole breaking news thing very often, but this is extremely important and something that needs to be discussed in a very timely manner. It is 6:37 p.m. West Coast time on Saturday, June 7th, and President Donald Trump, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, and Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, have essentially declared war against Los Angeles County in California. ICE has been conducting operations there for 2 days. They have met with significant pushback and protests from civilians and residents in the areas in which they're conducting operations, including Paramount, California today, Saturday, where an absolutely massive contingent of ICE agents deployed to a Home Depot to arrest immigrants working at a Home Depot. And it's continuing, and they are tear gassing crowds, confronting them physically, crowds who are protesting what ICE is doing. Now, border czar Tom Homan, I don't know what his exact title is, has said that he is going to deploy the National Guard in Los Angeles County tonight. The National Guard in California is under the control of Governor Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom obviously is in disagreement with this. However, the president does have the right and the power through the Constitution and statute to federalize a state's National Guard troops, even without the acquiescence, permission, or cooperation of that state's governor. How do they do that? They do that through Title 10 of the U.S. Code, Section 12406, as well as the Insurrection Act. Yeah, that's rearing its ugly head. I'm trying to not overreact to this. I'm trying to not sensationalize this. But when were the 2 times that Donald Trump was the happiest and most excited during his first term? When he called out the National Guard against Black Lives Matter protesters in Washington, D.C., and watched them commit violence against protesters in that circumstance, and when he watched for 3 hours in a dining room off of the Oval Office as his own supporters committed violence at the Capitol on January 6, 2021 in an effort to keep him in power. Donald Trump spoke often of the Insurrection Act during that period of time. Donald Trump spoke often of the Insurrection Act during the 4 years that he was out of office. People who have since become part of Donald Trump's administration, including the authors, coordinators, publishers of Project 2025, had strongly recommended that Donald Trump invoke the Insurrection Act on Inauguration Day in order to put down any protests against his second term across the United States. And so the Insurrection Act is a pathway towards Donald Trump declaring martial law. And martial law, we don't know what that would look like. If the President of the United States, over the objection of local governing politicians in the county of Los Angeles, California, and over the objection of the governor of California, were to declare martial law within Los Angeles County, California, nobody knows what that would look like. Now, so let's look at Title 10 of the U.S. Code as well as the Insurrection Act. What are the legal requirements that a president must meet in order to federalize the National Guard, placing it under his command? In essence, the president can federalize the National Guard when the United States or its possessions are invaded or in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, or if there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Language is kind of wishy-washy. Yeah. Well, the Insurrection Act dates back to like 1797. It uses language from that era. It has not been updated in over 150 years. Now, there are restrictions about, so essentially federalizing the National Guard and deploying them in Los Angeles County would be the equivalent of federal troops, federal militarized troops under federal control conducting law enforcement operations on U.S. soil within Los Angeles County. That is typically prohibited by the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the military or the National Guard from conducting law enforcement operations on U.S. soil. But the Insurrection Act, by statute, is an exception to Posse Comitatus. Judicial review is available in some occasions. Congress can get involved. I mean, like this Congress is going to do anything to stand up to Donald Trump. But a central hallmark of American democracy is that with tightly limited exceptions, the United States military, which is essentially what California National Guard troops would be if they were federalized and placed under Donald Trump's control, the U.S. military is not to be used here on U.S. soil. The National Guard has been federalized on a few occasions by presidents, like by Dwight Eisenhower during the 50s, to ensure that I think it was the state of Arkansas comply with school desegregation orders, federalized by John F. Kennedy in 62 and 63 for the same reason. The National Guard in California was federalized, I think, in 1992, following the Rodney King trial verdict and the riots that followed that. Donald Trump, I mean, he federalized the Washington, D.C. National Guard. I think he tried to do it with some surrounding states as well for the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020. But he didn't really need to do that because the National Guard within Washington, D.C. is always under the control of the President of the United States. And that has to do with some local government things. Autocrats often deploy military within their own country to quash dissent, target vulnerable communities, and corrupt elections. Such outbreaks can offer political cover for restrictions on civil liberties or the expansive of coercive safety measures. And again, there's some discussion of Posse Comitatus, and this then concern around domestic use of the military dates back to before the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence. And the Insurrection Act is one of a number of ways that an authoritarian-minded president can deploy and abuse the military domestically outside the constraints of the Posse Comitatus Act. The Insurrection Act authorizes the president to use the military at home to engage in civilian law enforcement in certain situations. The language of the act, which first dates back to 1792, permits the president to use the federal military domestically to suppress, quote, any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy. These terms are antiquated and out of date. There was one other thing that I wanted to look at here. So Tom Homan, Trump's border czar, told Fox News earlier today on Saturday that the administration is going to deploy the National Guard inside Los Angeles County tonight. We are already ahead of the game. We are already mobilizing. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who I'm sure will show up dressed just like an ICE agent. A message to the LA rioters: you will not stop us or slow us down. And if you lay a hand on a law enforcement officer, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Donald Trump had some shit to say about this in some Truth Social posts. But Stephen Miller is already calling the protests in Los Angeles a violent insurrection. And so this is what they've been itching for, guys. This is what they have been itching for. This is what Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan, Steve Bannon, all of these fuckers, this is what they have been itching for. Violence in the streets in the United States of America in response to something Trump is doing. And according to Tom Homan, his chief of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol or whatever, they are going to nationalize the California National Guard using the Insurrection Act and deploy them within Los Angeles County, within the United States. We knew they were going to come after blue states. We knew they were going to come after blue cities, sanctuary cities. This is a whole new ballgame. This is a whole new ballgame if they actually do this. It will be interesting to see how the California National Guard responds. Gavin Newsom has already responded quite forcefully and negatively to the White House about this. But it doesn't appear statutorily that he can do anything to stop it. And, I mean, what's he going to do? Go to court? This is Stephen Miller's wet dream. This is what Stephen Miller masturbates to when he's home alone trying to fall asleep. Same thing with Tom Homan. They, and Donald Trump as well, they are bloodthirsty for violence in the streets. And they're getting it in Los Angeles. They're getting it in the form of these protesters who are pushing back against these over-militarized ICE agents who swarmed a fucking Home Depot with MRAP military vehicles in full combat gear to arrest a bunch of undocumented immigrants working at a Home Depot. And I think that they're going to, according to them, as of right now at 6:49 p.m. on Saturday, June 7th, they are going to invoke the Insurrection Act. They're going to use that to federalize the California National Guard, and they are going to deploy them as members of the United States military on the streets of Los Angeles to conduct law enforcement operations under the control of the President of the United States. We are there. It is here. It is now.